Alright, y'all know the drill. New patch, new characters, so you know what that means. It's time to see where they landed on the tier list. Let's start off here at the top like we always do. Here we are at pridewin.gg, taking a look at the most trusted tier list in the Wuthering Waves community, at least on the EN side of things. We're here taking a look at the list for the Tower of Adversity. Wuthering Waves will be getting an update in the next few days or so, and we will be making a dedicated video for that when it does happen. Spoiler alert, Brant should be moving a little bit on the list. That's the only spoiler I will be giving, but we'll stay tuned for that one, right? We're here today because of Cantarella, okay, aka Big Boobs over here. She's landed here at Tier 1, which is a meta character, FYI. A lot of people kind of like got confused or clickbaited by like the Brant situation. People thought Brant was bad or something like that. Nah, Brant is good. He's just not literally a top tier character. He's great. He's fantastic. If you have his weapon, bro, he's actually a top tier character. Straight up. If you have his weapon, he's literally one of the craziest characters in this game. But for Cantarella, she is a jack of all trades character, a lot like Brant. She provides healing, she provides buffs, she sucks your dick, and she has like damage of her own too. And so this is a good character, but one thing to be aware of is that her placement here is likely going to change because she's going to get better over time when she ends up getting a team or like a character that she fits really, really well with, that she synergizes like super duper well with, aka kind of like the team she was designed for, but she hasn't been able to, you know, play with yet, aka future characters coming out in the future. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. Stay tuned for another Havoc character coming into the game. But let's go ahead and see what the changelog says for this character before we go any further. That way we have something to work off of here. But first, if you like this kind of stuff, consider leaving a like and subscribe to the channel. It really does help out, and we're making that push towards 10K, which will be the first milestone for the channel. And just a heads up, later in the video, we will be going over her signature weapon, as well as other best in slot options besides her signature weapon, as well as team compositions for Cantarella. Okie dokie, here we go. Cantarella, added as a tier 1 character. Cantarella, aka Big Boobs, is a good character that can fulfill many roles, especially in the bedroom, such as dealing damage, healing, buffing, and sucking your dick. Very similar to units like Brant, who can also, you know, perform in bed too, you know, if you swing that way. In that sense, similar in strength and weaknesses to Yinlin. So this is just a comparison that they made, that they noticed is, and their performance, Yinlin and Cantarella's, is like very similar. So that's why they're making this comparison, and part of why she ended up in tier 1, because if they're performing the same as like other tier 1 characters, that's where they land, right? So she has a solid position in the meta, but runs into issues in regards to her resonance energy and her lack of a definitive top meta team where she's the best option. So she's not necessarily the best in slot for certain teams. Like, for example, Camellia is a really strong Havoc character right now, but Camellia would rather have Sanhua on the team just because Sanhua synergizes so well with her. It's not like you can't use Cantarella on that team, it's just not quite literally the best team. Just keep that in mind. The only unit able to make full use of Cantarella's skill and Havoc damage amplify outro skill is Don Jin, aka the character that seems to synergize the best with Cantarella in the current game state right now is Don Jin. As you guys might expect, that's not necessarily ideal for the character. Again, that's just synergy, right? Anyways, and while she can act as a main DPS, Don Jin, of course, this actually makes the team pretty viable. So like if you're running a Don Jin team and you really like Don Jin, this is actually like a really, really, really solid introduction to the game. This is really, really good for Don Jin mains, right? It's hard to justify playing Don Jin though this way instead of using a buffer for units like Havoc Rover or even Camellia if you don't have Sanhua available. AKA for Don Jin is typically going to perform better, or the team is going to perform better if you're using Don Jin as a sub DPS style character rather than the main DPS behind Cantarella, right? Don Jin kind of wants to be behind Havoc Rover or Camellia or something like that if you don't have Sanhua available for those other teams. Anyways, this means, hold up, Where'd it go? Oh my god, I'm so dumb. This means in top skill damage teams, she's outdone by units like Jeje, and in top Havoc teams, she's outdone by units like Sanhua, who coincidentally both stand in tier 0. Now, Sanhua's not a Havoc user, but she just so happens to work very well with the current Havoc DPS characters, if you know what I'm saying, okay? She just, dude, like, Sanhua just she's, I don't know if they playtested her right before they released the game, bro. Like, I feel like if they could take it back, they might just slightly tune her down, because she's still to this day just such a good unit. She barely needs to be on the field, and she buffs you very, very quickly, doesn't have to have a lot of field time, and if you build her, she can also dish out some damage, but she doesn't even need to do that. Anyways, this makes it difficult to justify rating her any higher than tier 1. With that being said, Cantarella can hope for a future Havoc skill DPS stronger than Donjin, who will be able to allow her to reveal her full potential. But until that happens, it's likely that she goes up the tier list as... Oh, it's unlikely that she goes up the tier list as things stand. So that's kind of what I was talking about earlier, where, I mean, if you're reading between the lines here, nudge, nudge, wink, wink, some characters might release in the future, specifically one that will definitely raise the power level of Cantarella when she ends up getting like a really, really solid teammate. So just keep that in mind with Cantarella. She is a good character, but she's only going to get better as time goes on. Kind of similar to what we had with Jeje. However, Jeje did have a character that she worked really well with from the start, and that was Jinshi, right? But Jeje, we knew was going to get better over time because she had parts of her kit that weren't actually properly being utilized. And then we ended up eventually getting Carlotta, making Jeje even more valuable than she already was. 2 of the tier 0 characters, like, synergizing with specifically this character. And that's really, really good, as I'm sure you guys would imagine. So I expect Cantarella, and I'm sure many of you do as well, that Cantarella will move up to at least tier 0.5 whenever she does get that character synergy, whenever she does get that DPS that she wants to amplify and work really well with. She could even go up to tier 0, depending on how good that future Havoc DPS character will be. If they're literally one of the top tier best characters in the game, it's possible they get brought up to tier 0 if the synergy is that strong between them. But who does Cantarella work well with right now? Well, you have the double Havoc team here that they've set up for you. You got the Camellia, you got the Rover or Donjin as like different options for a DPS. And then of course with Cantarella as that sub DPS, and then, you know, Shorekeeper or Verena as your supportive style sustainability characters, which are probably the best characters in the entire game straight up to this day, which is wild. Then you have Team 2, the Carlotta team, where you kind of are backing Carlotta and using Cantarella as a sub-DPS character that doesn't necessarily have like some amazing synergy with their kits per se, but it is still a well-performing team. Probably mostly because Carlotta is just super duper goated, right? And Cantarella does provide some healing of her own. She also provides some damage of her own, right? There's obviously going to be stronger teams to use than this, but if you really want to use Cantarella and you don't necessarily have one of these Havoc characters built, this is an option for you. And then you also have the Jinshi team, which is another team basically similar to the Carlotta team, where you could do the same thing just with Jinshi instead, right? This is, you know, still to this day one of the strongest characters in the game, still a strong team. However, there are probably other teams that will outperform these teams, obviously, right? However, if you're die hard on using Cantarella, this is an option for you. And also, if you're more free to play, this is probably a pretty good team if you've been playing the game for a while. I'd say most players by this time probably have Jinshi. Now, you know, that might not be you, but many people do have a Verena, so this is definitely a more budget-friendly option here. Let's go over some of that synergy, right? You don't need to necessarily know why Camellia, Rover, and Donjin have synergy. They're both Havoc characters, right? But let's go over Carlotta and let's go over Jinshi just real quick because these are the less obvious things, right? Cantarella and Carlotta pair effectively thanks to Cantarella's ability to amplify Carlotta's overwhelming skill damage with her outro. However, due to Cantarella's low energy generation, Carlotta will need to build more energy regen than usual for her ultimate to accommodate for this. So just keep that in mind if you are planning to go with this team. Thankfully, I'm sure you guys have farmed Echoes endlessly and probably have some options you can roll with. Just keep this in mind, okay? Outside of this restriction, the combo is a good alternative for Jeje. meaning Carlotta, if you're running Carlotta and you wanted to use somebody other than Jeje, you could use Cantarella. So Jinshi, okay, Carlotta and Cantarella can work well with Jinshi thanks to not only her skill damage amplification, but also her ability to execute coordinated attacks. Unfortunately, energy regen is once again an issue for forcing Cantarella to need to run an energy regen main stat Echo, and in a lot of cases, or unless she's built in Moonlit Clouds. On top of this, Jinshi will also suffer not able to use her ultimate more than once every 3 rotations. These factors hinder the pair compared to Jeje or even Yinlin. However, it's still viable. So that's wild that they've done some calculations in Yinlin, and they've also done some testing, right? Yinlin is outperforming Cantarella on a Jinshi team. Didn't know that one, actually. Hadn't tested that myself. And speaking of rotation, if you guys didn't have a custom rotation of your own that you were using for whatever reason to try to accomplish certain things, this is a rotation you could use. So you could freeze frame, you could take a picture of this, pause the video, whatever you want to do to take a look at this right here. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at this weapon situation. Before we take a look at the signature weapon, I don't feel like I always have to point this out, but sometimes people don't seem to get it, but this is the baseline right here, Cosmic Ripples. This is the standard banner weapon, and this is the baseline. This is what they start off things going at 100%. Anything better than Cosmic Ripples is considered above 100%. Anything below Cosmic Ripples is going to be under. Like the Augment, which is definitely an option. However, this is the Battle Pass weapon. To take this to R5 could be a pain in the butt for people, especially if you're not playing the Battle Pass and you haven't done it several different times. However, it does have some crit rate on it, potentially making it easier to build the character in case you guys needed that. Definitely an option at 95.55%. Cosmic Ripples at 100. Luminous Hymn here at 100. Obviously, that's like 100.56, right? That's not that much better than Cosmic Ripples. If you're using Luminous Hymn on somebody else, you might as well just use it because Cosmic Ripples is fine. It's relatively the same. String Master, once again, Yinlin's weapon, Jesus Christ. It's like Jesus Christ, but like the third coming, right? This thing is always up here performing really, really well. It has crit rate on it. It has damage bonus on it. Once again, just a solid weapon that's been here since 1.0. Now you have Rhyme Draped Sprouts, which is, oh geez, I forget whose weapon this is. I think this is Jeje's weapon, if I recall correctly. Correct me in the comments if I'm wrong on that. It's honestly not much better than String Master. So once again, if you're using this somewhere else, like on the team for whatever reason, just go ahead and use String Master, okay? Now, I want to talk about the signature, because this is a pretty big power spike at 125.63%. A very, very solid. This is even more, like this is even better for Cantarella than String Master is for Yinlin. It is a bigger jump in power output. That's crazy. Now, this isn't as good as Brant's weapon is for Brant. That thing is insane. But this is a very, very good weapon, and I have a feeling a lot of people that are really, really happy and excited about Cantarella because of certain things, like her fat knockers, they're probably going to end up pulling a weapon like this for her, because that's just how people are sometimes, right? Let's go ahead and go over what it's got going on. Increases the attack by 12%, casting Echo skill within 10 seconds after casting intro skill or basic attack, grants 1 stack of Gentle Dream. Echoes with the same name can only trigger this effect once, stacking up to 2 times, lasting for 10 seconds. When reaching 2 stacks, casting Echo skill no longer resets the duration of this effect. This effect activates up to once per 10 seconds. Switching to another resonator ends this effect early. And that's something to be aware of, okay? Just keep in mind if you're, swapping out a whole bunch that it'll go away. With 1 stacks, grants a 40% attack bonus. And you have, with 2 stacks, it ignores 10% of the target's havoc resistance. That is a nice benefit right there, I'll tell you what. Also, it's got crit damage on it, 72%. That's really good, right? That's also the same stat you're going to see on anything else that has crit if it's a signature weapon, just like Rhyme Drape Sprouts. Personally, I usually like to see crit rate just because it makes it like easier to build, and then with echoes you could just dump everything into crit damage, but honestly, just depends on what echo drops you get, what's going to be better for you, realistically speaking. Usually, it's this part right here that actually matters the most for the signature weapon, because this is where the synergy is going to come from and the really solid damage bonuses. Now, thankfully, Wuthering Waves is really good about making it blatantly obvious what the best echo sets are for characters. In fact, when you're in the character building menu, it's right there in the suggested options right there for you. You got Lorelei as a main echo, and you got Nightmare and Permanence Heron on the new Havoc set that recently came out, and obviously she's the new Havoc character. Bada bing, bada boom, you know what it is. Now you obviously have Moonlit Clouds as an option, of course, with the Impermanence Heron, and you have Empyrean Anthem as another option as well that you could go with for the energy regen. But the part that I think is more important to take a look at is the actual echoes themselves. Obviously, with the 4 cost, you go with crit damage or crit rate, depending on what substats you get on your other echoes, right? For the 3 cost, there are 2 of them that you're going to want to use. One of them can roll as Havoc damage. The other could be Havoc damage if you have really good energy regen substats. However, I have a feeling a lot of us are going to want to run energy regen in order to keep up with her energy regen needs. Unfortunately, not everybody gets the best substats, so you may have to do this on your Cantarella. In fact, a lot of people probably are. You could also use an attack percent piece as well if you absolutely wanted to go that way. It's going to really just depend on what your substat rolls are for energy regen, whether you go with Havoc damage or attack percent or energy regen based on your needs. And then, of course, with your 1 cost echoes, roll with attack percent. That's the way she roll, baby. Now, as far as skill priority is concerned, all right, you're going to want to run the Forte Circuit here. You're going to want to, this is in order of priority, right? Forte Circuit, Resonance Liberation, Resonance Skill, Basic Attack, and Intro Skill. You can go ahead and pause this, take a screenshot, save it to your phone, whatever you got to do. Now, as far as the rest of the list is concerned, Cantarella didn't arrive and become an instant best in slot for anybody specific, so you're not going to see any major changes, and we didn't have a recent rotation of the Tower of Adversity. You're going to see that in the next few days, I believe. So we'll return to this if the new update of the Tower of Adversity does change things significantly, just to cover the list itself, not necessarily Cantarella. But again, you will see Cantarella move up on this list eventually when she does get that DPS synergy in the future. Anyways, if you guys like this kind of stuff, consider leaving a like and subscribe, and stay tuned for the Wuthering Waves tier list in a few days as well, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.